Hey there, Rob Sobek with Don's Appliances, here today with my dear friend James. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Rob. Hi.
Today, we are going to be talking about aging in place with your kitchen design. Here in 2025, we are in the age of a lot of ranges in new construction and remodel and things of that nature.
hmm
And a lot of times, a big rebuttal that gets drawn out is, maybe what's going to happen when we get older, bending
hmm
over and getting into that range. And that brought up the topic of not just with cooking, but with any of the appliances that we sell. What's something that you're going to specify to age with grace in
hmm
your new kitchen design?
Probably not a double oven range, but
Hmm.
in general, that's something to consider. Like, large ranges, large hoods are very trendy right now because it comes to be kind of a focal point in your kitchen. But then you got to consider how low everything's going to be, bending over, getting things in and out, especially those heavy, like if you're doing roast and turkeys and things. So I do recommend a lot of my customers consider looking at wall ovens and cooktops. There's going to be a lot of benefits in terms of accessibility there, especially with a lot of these brands coming out with side swing ovens and French door ovens where you're able to get in closer, so your center of gravity is going to be a little closer. It's a little easier to pull things out. Those are things to maybe consider on the cooking side. I've had some customers considering like the Fisher and Paykel dishwasher drawers recently because it gives them that upper drawer where it's a little easier to access. The
Hmm.
things to keep in mind as far as kitchen stuff goes. Keeping things up as high as you can so you're not having to go down low to get things in and out of there.
Absolutely. And, like front control cooktops, like
Yeah.
whether it be like the Gaggenau Varios with the knobs across
Mm-hmm.
the front, Wolf Contemporary with the knobs across the front, getting that range aesthetic when it comes to your cooking service,
Mm-hmm.
but then having front access, not having to look down on a darker point in the kitchen, not having to turn on that overhead light. For an electric or an induction or a gas cooktop, having the knobs across the front is a nice convenience feature, whether it be ADA compliancy or just aging in place.
Sure. Yeah. So another area maybe the people don't consider. I have a lot of customers that are aging that are used to top load laundry, and that's an area where they're comfortable with it and they want to consider that. But a lot of these new top loaders are getting very deep,
Hmm.
and that's usually if someone comes in and they're looking at some of these, I'll open the lid and ask them how easy is it for you to reach things in the bottom. You got that one pair of socks and it's sitting down, 3 feet in the bottom of a tub. It can be a little challenging to get things in and out. So it might be a good move to consider front load laundry on pedestals. So, back in my earlier days, I used to keep like a stress ball and I would throw it in the back of a front load washer and ask them to get that out and throw it in one without a pedestal. Have them try that versus the other things because it's a good simulation for that last couple little things that could be hanging out in the back of the unit. You figure with front load sets on a pedestal, and they can be deep too, but if they're up, they're up at a much more accessible height.
Hmm.
So, I'm 6'5", so it's like, for me to get down on ground, and I have to on mine because my laundry is stacked, but, to get down to ground level, at 40, it's not too bad. Give it another 20 years, it'll probably be a challenge for me.
And to that point, there's many different shapes and sizes of customers. So when it
Yeah.
comes to front load laundry, you have compact units on pedestals. You
Mm,
have full size units on what we would just call a riser, where it's not a drawer, but it's taking it anywhere from 7 to 9 inches off the floor. And then the full height drawer pedestal is more like 15 off of the floor. So depending on how tall the customer is,
mhm.
how bad their back is, whatever the case may be, making that decision can be important about aging in place. And then, but then on the inverse of that, you also have the design that is very in right now for laundry rooms is a countertop running over front load machines. So, do you want a folding station on top of your washer and dryer? Or do you want easier access now and in the future? Because it's really unrealistic to have both. Because having a counter 55 off the floor, you is not.
I could probably do it,
Well,
but
we'd be fine,
yeah.
right? But the average everyday customer usually doesn't want their countertop to be 5 feet off the floor.
Sure. And then, and to that point, if we're talking about replacement down the road, countertops over front load laundry is sometimes tough to do. So,
Not unless you're right, and you have to plan for the future if you do it, right?
yeah. So, that's a good move. Back to kitchen, microwave drawers. I
I mean,
think,
that's a vast majority of what we sell. I don't
mhm,
think necessarily a lot of it has to do with aging in place. I think it's a lot more designer centric
yeah,
as far as getting it out of an upper cabinet, out of a wall cabinet, and out of sight,
hmm,
hiding it in an island, facing the cooking area so you really don't see it. It's not really considered a major appliance, but it's absolutely a necessity. But it does, obviously, it makes it way more accessible. Are you bending over? Yes, but you're just dropping it in opposed to reaching over your head and grabbing something hot. So definitely, to your point, it is a lot more accessible for somebody that's aging in place.
so refrigeration, that's one that, I have a lot of customers that maybe don't consider that, but the French door refrigerator or bottom freezer versus side by side versus top freezer, I would feel like maybe a bottom freezer unit might be a little bit more convenient. I feel like most people are accessing the fresh food section
Hmm.
more often, and then that's going to place that up at a higher level where it's easier to see everything. You're able to grab everything, and then yeah, your freezer is going to be down at the bottom, but then you're in there much less frequently. So that might be a good consideration. Side by side, potentially, because you can store it's easy to organize. It's easy to find things, but then B, it brings everything up to a nice, comfortable, at least the things you want to have at a higher comfort level. So you're not constantly download digging through things. So, those are maybe areas to consider as well.
And as far as reachability, getting a counter depth refrigerator, like most people don't think of that as being like an accessibility choice.
Hmm.
But to that point, we're in the age of mega capacity and max and 30 plus cubic foot full depth refrigerators.
Hmm.
A lot of people come in saying, I need all the space I can get. And I understand that. But then when they buy a new fridge in 8, 9, 10 years, they come in and say, we throw away so much food because we lose so much in the back of the fridge.
Hmm.
For somebody who has issues, let's say reaching into a top loader, I bet you they would have a similar issue reaching to the back of a full depth French door refrigerator too.
Sure. And yeah, and then some of these units, they can be kind of tall and reaching in there, they said maybe not an issue for you or me, but there are plenty of customers out there that have to consider that as well, especially some of these built-in refrigerators now.
Well, right. Yeah, they just, with the cooling systems all going low, that top shelf just seems to be getting higher and higher and higher. So that reduced depth helps offset, that major height difference between it and a freestanding refrigerator too.
Yeah. And if you're like 5'3", then you're going to be using a step stool to get to that top shelf. So,
Hmm.
so anything else you can think of?
For just ease of accessibility, another thing to point out, it's, a lot of things that are built for being handicap accessible are really good for aging in place. So thinking about your wall mounted range hood or hood insert, getting one that has a remote control,
Hmm.
whether it be wall mounted, cabinet mounted, or just in a drawer next to it. That's really, really great for aging in place, not having to reach up and over, reach above your head. So that's a big feature that I sell, not
Yeah.
just for older clients, but just for any client about aging in place.
Sure. And then, I mean, this is getting kind of fancy, but you can even get ones with Wi-Fi in them now where the range will talk to the hood and turn itself on automatically. So, you know,
We have a podcast about that.
yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you want to know a little bit more, check out donsappliances.com, stop into his store, talk to me. You might bump into this guy. He's kind of all over the place. And, thanks for being here, Rob.
Glad to be here, James.